It's 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. Welcome aboard the Postgame Show. I found out this morning that it's an abbreviated edition of the Postgame Show because I was convinced that South Carolina and Vanderbilt tipped off at 7 o'clock tonight. And I was wrong. They tip off at 6 Eastern, 5 o'clock Central Time.
What kind of crowd are they expecting to be at Memorial Gym at 5 o'clock?
I don't know.
On a Wednesday.
On a Wednesday. Why are you making a Southeastern Conference basketball game start at 5 on a Wednesday? Now, I understand before somebody says, well, Jay, last week the girls played against A&M at 5. I know why they did that one, and it made sense because their television partner was also televising the national championship, well, at least the tournament, the tournament. And so that's I understand that one. Elijah, check me if I'm wrong, please, okay? Because I am wrong routinely enough. Is there a college football playoff game tonight?
There is not.
NFL playoff game tonight?
There most certainly is not.
NBA and NHL in the playoffs yet?
Not for another couple months.
Major League Baseball started?
Not till April.
Why are they playing at 5 o'clock?
That's a really good question. One that I have absolutely zero answer for. None.
I know it's 6 o'clock Eastern. I know Elijah and I differ sometimes on the Eastern versus Central time zone. Elijah calls the Central time zone.
It is the Lord's time zone.
And I get it. But as I counter with that, half the American population lives in the Eastern time zone.
I feel bad for half the American population.
No, you don't, because you live in it too.
That includes myself. I feel bad for myself. I am one to wallow in self-pity.
Well, that's fair. That said, we will be out of here at 5:30. Make way for Derek and Judge Casey Manning, and Carolina and Vandy will tip at 6 o'clock Eastern. We'll have it for you on 107.5 The Game in Columbia and all across the Gamecock Radio Network. Proud to be the flagship station of the University of South Carolina's athletics programs. We'll also get into a little football, a couple of big names going into the draft. I confused myself when I was talking to Elijah earlier. I was like, yeah, so-and-so is going into the portal. Draft. I don't know which one it is anymore. I can't tell. This time it's the draft. We'll touch on some of those for you.
The draft is just an organized portal.
That's right.
More like a Stargate.
Some more honors for Carolina's quarterback. We'll touch on those things for you, too. Chris Lee, who covers Vandy for 24/7 Sports, going to join us bottom of the hour. We'll certainly start him and go about half and half is what I'm thinking here. Maybe a little more with basketball just because of the timing. But certainly want to ask Chris what's going on inside Vandy football. Yeah, they've gotten Diego Pavia back, or at least I think they've got him back, right? Like, do we know? Is that etched in stone, or is that still written in, like, NCAA pencil? I'm not sure exactly where we are.
I feel like it is set in stone.
Yeah.
Because the NCAA doesn't win in court.
Or is it?
And that is who his opponent is in a courtroom. So.
Is it written in stone with pencil? So,
Are the Harlem Globetrotters, is that a win against the Washington Generals set in stone before the game happens? No, but you know what's going to happen whenever we play the game. Right. So it's kind of like that.
Right. But we'll talk to Chris coming up in just a little bit. And our buddy Alan Cole will join us bottom of the 4 o'clock hour with a few Gamecock basketball and football notes as well. So we'll do that for you, too. Nothing new to report around the National Football League coaching vacancies. Lots of chatter, as anyone would imagine, no matter who the Dallas Cowboys were looking at. But when you do look at a famous former player and a Hall of Famer to boot, like Dion, at least you chat with him, it's going to make even more headlines, as if it wouldn't already. It's hard to really imagine how many more headlines they could make. Listen, I like Dion a lot, all right? The only time I ever got mad at Dion is when Bobby Cox got mad at Dion for the stunt back in the 90s when Dion tried to play in an NFL game and then report back to the Braves for a playoff game at the same time. And he did keep playing, but Bobby was not happy about that, and I don't blame Bobby. Anyway, other than that, I'm a big fan of Dion. I'm not one who sits there and questions, what has Dion done to be coach of the Dallas Cowboys? Not much. And again, one of the things that a lot of people say about college coaches and why they don't translate well to the NFL is because the primary job of a head coach at a college football program, certainly a major college football program, is the acquisition of talent. And it's that simple. It really is that simple. Now, you need to be a good coach. And when you can blend all of it, Nick Saban, then you build, something that's absolutely spectacular. Urban Meyer saw that firsthand, right? I mean, Urban was really good at acquiring talent at UF and at Ohio State. And then he had to work with a whole bunch of player personnel types at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he couldn't scream at the players. Or
kick his kickers.
Yeah, and it lasted about a week. He stayed longer than that, but I think by about a weekend, it was like, well, this isn't going to work. So, Deion in year 2, I mean, listen, we all know what he did, right? It made a lot of people mad. Gutted the Colorado roster and then completely rebuilt the Colorado roster. And while they didn't make the playoff, they were on the cusp. They had a late loss in the regular season that kept them out of the Big 12 championship game. But they won 9 games, right? Now, they didn't do well in their bowl game either, right?
Oh, they got absolutely waxed by conference mate BYU.
Yeah. And why'd they play a conference team in a bowl game?
Because these conferences are so bloated that some of these conferences do have tie-ins that are still contractually obligated to do. So I believe it was, the Pac-12 and Big 12 still had the contract to play in that bowl game.
Okay.
So some of the bowl tie-ins still counted as if it was last year. So technically Colorado was the Pac-12 tie-in to the Alamo Bowl.
Okay.
BYU was the
Fair
Big
enough.
12.
I couldn't remember. I knew there was something. I just couldn't remember for sure. They just ran out of teams. Anyway, we'll come back around to a little bit of this. If Deion ends up being the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, okay, I don't think he's going to.
No, I think it's a small chance.
Again, and I tweeted this out, and I know some others have felt the same way. And again, I got no problem with this. Some people do. I don't, because I'm not naive. Jerry and Deion know what they're doing here, man. This is the PR machine cranking up, right? I mean, it's going full throttle right now.
Both of those men are marketing-minded individuals.
I want more attention on me, and more attention likely means more money for me. That's capitalism. I'm okay with that. I genuinely am. I believe Deion when he says he's got the kickstand down in Boulder and he wants. Now, I'll be curious. This year is going to tell us a lot more about the head football coach that is Deion Sanders, because he will not have the Heisman winner. He will not have his son, who is going to be, at least by most accounts, a top 10 pick in the draft. That'll be 2 top 10 picks, right? I mean, is Travis Hunter? I mean, is he going top 10 too? I think he will.
Yeah. Oh, I think he absolutely will. Top 5, I would even say.
Maybe.
And they still couldn't win the Big 12.
Yeah. So,
that's a good league.
Right. Because you got to go acquire some talent. So we'll see. But that's been making some news too. Upsets last night in SEC men's basketball. Ole Miss was, I thought, fantastic in the second half. Just defensively locking Alabama down, making some big shots. They win in Tuscaloosa. Missouri, with a great shooting night, goes down and wins in Gainesville. Some good ones there. Coach Cal and Arkansas lose in LSU or at LSU. That's not really an upset per se, but they're 0-4 in conference play. Kentucky got a nice win, and Auburn was really, really good last night against Mississippi State, for those of you who were watching some SEC hoops. And on the Auburn game, Here's a question I want all of us to ponder, and we're going to discuss throughout the day. And I think we'll certainly, Elijah and I will be discussing this, and we'll probably throw this question to Alan in the next hour. Already, South Carolina has seen Mississippi State. They went to Starkville and played horribly, and the score proved it. And South Carolina has seen Auburn, and down 2 starters. And then Auburn losing their best player in the middle of the second half, South Carolina played really well. You might say that South Carolina against Auburn played its best basketball game of the season. That's a debatable point, but I think it's a debate that some people could probably win. And then last night, State goes to Auburn and loses by 20. And I asked Elijah, actually, I posed this question to him during the game last night. We were texting back and forth. And what does that game last night say about South Carolina? I don't know that there's one answer. But this is a common opponents. Did South Carolina have a really just off day in Starkville for whatever reasons of their own doing? Got punched in the mouth early and never recovered. Sometimes that happens. Even if your boxer goes down in the first round, you still fight the whole 12. You lose all 12 rounds, but they didn't knock you out. Although maybe they did. But you just had an off day. Or did you just not? Did you Mike Tyson against Buster Douglas? Pfft, whatever. I don't care. I don't know. Conversely, a week later, South Carolina hosts the best team in the conference. And at one point had a 9-point lead. Yes, they lost. But again, Carolina down 2 starters. Auburn
and went toe-to-toe.
Yeah. Auburn, again, lost their best player. Did Auburn take an off day? I don't know. So and again, I don't know if there is an answer, Mr. Campbell. But in watching that last night, I'm like, man, so let me get this straight. Carolina gets destroyed by State. Carolina goes toe-to-toe with Auburn. And Auburn destroys State. What does that tell me about South Carolina?
I think it tells you 2 things. 1, home court advantage is a very real thing. Even if there is a lot of visitors from the away team in the arena. Mm-hmm. Because the travel, everything like that. I think there's, in college basketball specifically, that's always been one of the things I think that matters a lot is home court advantage. That's where you see a lot of upsets happen. Number 2, Jay Phillips, I think is a very, very specific detail about how Auburn played against Colin Murray Boyles compared to how Mississippi State played against Colin. Mississippi State made Colin Murray Boyles play in a phone booth. They defensively are really good at keeping you towards the sideline.
What's a phone booth, Elijah?
Don't know. Never been in one. I've actually, I think I've been in one prop phone booth in my life, and I don't think I've ever seen one in the United States. How about that?
Just for the kids.
Yeah, just for the kiddos.
But anyway,
what a phone booth is.
Please, go ahead.
But Mississippi State does a really, one of their core defensive principles is keeping the ball close to the sideline. They love to use that sideline as a second or third defender. They don't like when the ball gets in the middle of the floor. The teams that play best against MSU are the ones who get the ball into the middle of the floor. Colin Murray Boyles, his office is kind of that elbow extended or short corner part of the floor, right? Mississippi State basically got him into that position, and they collapsed on him. These double teams, swiping at the ball, making him have to get rid of it. Didn't score a lot of points. Same thing for Alabama. Alabama would go one-on-one with them occasionally, but the entire game that Auburn and South Carolina played, Auburn trusted their bigs to go one-on-one with Colin Murray Boyles, and I thought that was foolish because Colin took Janai Broome off of the dribble at will in that game. Or if Dylan Cardwell was on him, he took him off the dribble. They could not guard Colin one-on-one, and they were not helping off of the shooters to collapse onto Colin and make him get rid of the ball, and that's why he scored 25 points, 18 in the first half. And I think we've noticed here in Columbia that this team comes and goes as Colin Murray Boyles comes and goes, right? I think the evidence is pretty clear. He was in single-digit scoring against Alabama and Mississippi State, and you got your tail kicked in those 2 games. Colin goes off for 25. You go toe-to-toe with the best team in college basketball. Your ceiling is what Colin Murray Boyles does because there are some games in which you will not have the better team on the floor, but you will have the best player. And I think that was kind of evident on Saturday of what this team can be when Colin's at his best.
We'll touch more on that for you throughout the course of the afternoon. Again, Chris Lee, 24/7 beat reporter covering Vandy, joins us in about 15 minutes. Alan Cole, GamecockScoop.com, coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. Got a big honor for Lenore Sellers. We'll touch on that on the other side when the postgame show returns. I tell you about our good friends at Cato's Power Equipment. January is upon us. Resolve to do better yard work. You do it for yourself. Get into Cato's. See the latest and a lot of battery-powered equipment that makes things a lot easier for the homeowner. A lot less stuff to worry about, a lot less to think about when it comes to getting things serviced. Just charge the battery up, put it back in, away you go. Lawnmowers, blowers, edgers, trimmers, saws, so many products now that are battery powered and are working just as well. Ben and Matt at Cato's have told me, listen, these things are fantastic. And again, I'm getting ready to get some new stuff from the Toro line of battery powered equipment. Very excited about that. They're doing delivery for you for big orders for Toro and Gravely. Check them out and see 30-mile radius. You need something big, they'll get it to you. Just see Cato's or go to catospowerequipment.com. So whether you do it for yourself, you do it for a living, sales, service, advice, all at Cato's. Family owned since 1983. Check them out online right now at catospowerequipment.com. Twenty minutes after 3 o'clock on this Wednesday afternoon. Welcome back in. Jay and Elijah with you. Remind you that we, all of us that work here on this very radio station, are going to be out at Pro Swing on Friday for the official grand opening. And I'll let you in on a little secret. They're open, and it's cool. But it's the official grand opening on Friday.
The official party is always the better
So
one.
we'll be there 6 to 6. Looking forward to it. Come see us. Forest Drive, right across the street from the Lowe's Foods. That's the best I can tell you.
It's a pretty good landmark.
It's like right. I mean, when I say right across the street,
Lowe's Foods.
Well, they share a stoplight even, like to get in, like to cross. Because sometimes on a Friday afternoon on Forest Drive, it's pretty busy. Kind of reminds me of what Harbison is sometimes. Seriously.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Yeah. Which is good because I mean, people want to be there. There's a lot to do. Unlike Harbison, it's very close to my house on Forest Drive. So again, I'm very excited about that. I'm not even going to lie about that.
The convenience of the location certainly benefits you.
Yeah, I'm being very honest with all of you. I am very excited because this is very close to where I live. I got no problems with Harbison.
Which means they might have to issue a restraining order against you for being so close.
Ultimately, Steve, who's kind of running things day to day, is going to have to have a sign posted out front that says "Don't let him back in."
Watch this man
at some point. Yeah.
But if I bring pajamas, he will stay overnight.
I've got Pro Swing coming into my neighborhood. Now, speaking of Harbison, if I could just get a second location in town from my friends at the British Bulldog.
Yes.
I don't know that I would ever have to leave ever again, ever.
Big fan of the dog.
Yeah. Love those guys. Except for right now as Arsenal tries to challenge Liverpool for the championship.
They are Liverpool supporters.
Oh, they're not just Liverpool supporters, my man. I think I don't know what they call it. It's probably something different.
Probably.
There's a new level. There's a higher level.
Which is why my trivia team name there on Wednesday nights is the Liverfools.
Ah.
Nice little play on words
Savvy.
there. Yeah.
Savvy. Congratulations to Lenore Sellers, the 2024 National Freshman Offensive Player of the Year, selected by the members of the Football Writers Association of America. So people that, know what's up.
That's right. Members.
He was third team All SEC. He was SEC Freshman of the Year by league coaches this season, as most of you know, but I'll give you the numbers anyway. He completed 65% of his passes for 2,274 yards, 17 touchdowns through the air, ran for 655, and remember, that's a net on 155 carries, third best among SEC quarterbacks, 7 rushing touchdowns, tied for second in the league of quarterbacks, of course. Two-time winner of the Offensive Player of the Week award, two-time recipient of the Freshman of the Week award. So congratulations to Lenore Sellers. Now, I did see there were some people nationally, like Jeremiah Smith didn't get the Freshman of the Year. I think it's because maybe there wasn't and I know both had incomplete seasons. Is that fair in terms of like not playing like at the highest level all year long?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Jeremiah Smith, and I think it wasn't any fault of Jeremiah's. I think Ohio State, in a couple of their biggest games, kind of neglected to get him the football because that kid has made some amazing catches this year. But there were a couple of games where he was a little more silent. And I think the quarterback position, the quarterback position's a little more important in terms of a team's success. And I think South Carolina overachieving compared to what the preseason expectation was a result of Lenore Sellers tapping into what his potential is. Like, the defense was good enough for you to win 7 games on its own.
Right.
But you stole a couple of games, like in the last minute of the game against Missouri and at Clemson, because Lenore's was so good.
Yeah.
I think Lenore's maybe accounted for more wins. I think Jeremiah Smith might be a better NFL prospect, and he's certainly one of the best talents in the entire sport. But I think just what Lenore's did in terms of the weight he had to carry at South Carolina being the quarterback compared to Jeremiah Smith also having like 3 really good receivers on the offense with him and a good quarterback and 2 elite running backs and a really good offensive line when healthy, maybe had a difference in how that vote went.
Well, is it fair for me, and I know this is going to sound very subjective, so I get it. But is it fair for me to say, hey, good for the football writers, and this is a national organization, obviously, and to not maybe go with that best player, not best player per se, but big time player on the best team narrative, and instead, really dig into it and figure out, mine for something that's a little more again, more deserving is too subjective, but you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's one really good way to look at it. And honestly, if someone from the Football Writers Association of America called me right now and said, Elijah, I voted for Jeremiah Smith, I mean, I can't really argue against you. I think both are really deserving, and I think you can make really good cases for both of those guys to win the award. But I think Lenoris winning it is probably maybe a better bellwether of these guys and girls being more value-based in their voting as opposed to spectacular highlight reels, which Lenore still had too. But, I mean, Jeremiah Smith is having one of those seasons where you watch him and you're like, that's an NFL player right now that can't play in the NFL because of some stupid rules that require him to play 2 more years in college. So I think it's kind of more of an indictment on what they valued. Do you value the value of what one person had on his team and the impact he had on his team as a whole, or flashy stat lines and that level of productivity? I mean, really, you could tell me you voted for Jeremiah Smith, or you could tell me that he should have won the award. I can't really push back too hard because he's that good. And same goes for Lenoris. But I think that is kind of just a reflection on how this award was viewed.
So on that note, Lenoris, as we mentioned in the report there, was the 3rd-team all-conference quarterback overall this season, right?
It's awesome.
Will he be higher than 3rd when we vote at Media Days?
I think of all the quarterbacks coming back.
I mean, Nussmeier's coming back. Lagway's coming back. Nico's coming back. Arch Manning's going to be there, and he's going to get tons of consideration.
Yeah, I think he is. I think so. I think he'll be first or 2nd team. Maybe even first. Because Lenoris was better than Nico. We still don't have a full season of Arch. I know Arch was really good whenever he played. And I was really impressed with Arch Manning. And I actually think he might end up having an upgrade at quarterback in Austin going into next year. I don't think Gunnar Stockton's going to take that. Lagway was awesome last year, but I don't know if you could say Lagway had a better season than Lenoris. So if we're talking sample size here and impact on team, so Lenoris still has that edge. I think there might be a way. Like Jackson Arnold's not going to get it. I'm just cycling through quarterbacks in my head. We'll see what Ole Miss has coming.
Yeah, do we know who's
they haven't portaled anybody.
I would say they don't have anybody, do they? Yeah.
So it's going to be next man up for them. So that's going to be an unproven quarterback. I know Kentucky's probably going to portal another quarterback this year if they haven't already.
Cook is gone.
Nussmeier might be the only one, I think, that would stand between Lenoris and being 1st-team preseason All-SEC.
Yeah. Pavia's back.
But Lenoris had a better season.
No, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I'm not asking that saying I have an opinion up or down on which way it's going to go.
I can tell you where my vote's probably going to go. I think Lenoris probably. I think I've talked myself into Lenoris maybe being number 1 on mine going into next year. Now I've got 6 months to think about it.
Yeah, but it's a preseason vote. I think Arch is going to probably get a hefty percentage of those votes.
He'll probably get some of those. Marcel Reed. I don't know if he gets a 1st or 2nd team vote.
Yeah,
but Marcel Reed's coming back,
and I think Nussmeier is going to get a hefty chunk as well. But I think Lenoris is going to. I'm just curious as to. And again, we do have plenty of time, but as I'm thinking about those things, this is
get my old noggin working.
That's what we do.
They don't work too much.
Speaking of Diego Pavia, we'll touch on a little Vandy football, but mostly basketball. Gamecocks and Commodores tipping off in just a couple of hours up in Music City. Chris Lee, 24/7 beat writer covering Vandy, will join us when the postgame show returns.
Yes. Playoff action. Look, Baltimore and Buffalo on Sunday is, to quote one famous John Anthony, it's going to be a monster. And I'm excited to watch that. I'm even more excited to get in on the action with my friends over at Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. And you can do the same. And I'm going to go heavy on these quarterbacks. Look, these are 2 guys that are MVP candidates. I think they're going to show out. I think they both get a rushing touchdown. So I'm going to pick more on rushing touchdowns. And you know what? I'm here to cheer on high-flying action. Let's go more on passing yards for those 2 gentlemen as well. You can do the same. Just download the app today, and if you use promo code 1075GAME, you will get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Again, it's really easy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players from 2 different teams and their stat projections. you can win up to 100 times your cash. Again, promo code 1075GAME, Prize Picks. Run your game.
Time to talk a little Carolina Vandy hoops. The men get at it tonight up in Nashville. It's a 6 o'clock Eastern time tip. So, again, rush hour at Memorial Coliseum on up in Nashville, 5 o'clock. Here to tell us why the powers that be in the Southeastern Conference and the four-letter network chose to put this game at 5 o'clock Central is Chris Lee on the beat covering Vandy for 24/7 Sports. I mean,
we're clearly not thrilled with it.
Yeah, Chris, that's the story. Why is this game at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday? Good to have you.
That's a good question. I have seen lots of SEC games. I'm not sure I've seen one at 5 on on a Wednesday before. I can only assume that the strings are being pulled by the network. I'm sure, you know. I know Garth Glissman a little bit, who runs basketball, and I'm sure I could text him and ask him. But, I mean, the obvious answer is what controls everything? It's TV. Now, I'll tell you what I don't understand, and I'm sure this can be explained by they've got other games too, but I don't get when you've got 8 games in the midweek, why not do 4 one night, 4 another night?
Yeah.
Instead of 5 and 3. You see that several times, and so, I don't know, there's a lack of optimal distribution on tip-off times and days, but I'm I just would have to think that's
yeah.
the
Well,
answer
and one more rant.
Some other league somewhere dictates that.
Yeah. One more rant on that. Elijah and I talked about it yesterday. The games in Auburn and Tuscaloosa tipped at 6 Central, and then they had a game tip in Gainesville at 9 Eastern, 8 Central. It's like, wait a minute, why don't you at least stagger? So, but anyway, I'm not, so it is what it is.
And one more thing is you've got Oklahoma and Texas at 9 tonight. Well, you've only got 3 games, and one starts at 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
So, anyway.
But again, it's 6 Eastern, so I get it. That's, at least in this time zone, you're supposed to be home from work by then. We'll figure it out. Let's talk about this game. Take us through a little bit of what Vandy's been looking like from your perspective. I look at some of the stats. A lot of minutes. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that are basically playing 20 or more minutes a night. So there's a deep bench. I know there's a lot of non-con action as well, but what is this team looking like from your perspective relative to what we had seen the last couple of years?
Well, I mean, it is balanced, and the interesting thing is all those 9 guys are all new. I think Mark Byington did a tremendous job bringing in a new roster. They like to play fast. They haven't been able to do that as much in the SEC, and they like to really get after you with their guards and get steals and create easy opportunities on the other end and those sorts of things, which is easier to do when you are deep and play a lot of guys. The main guy to watch tonight, probably Jason Edwards, who held scoreless last week against Mississippi State after he took a knee to the thigh against LSU, clearly hampered him. He only played 11 minutes, came back this week and got 20 against Missouri and kind of kept him in it. He's the guy that you have to really watch and guard because he can take the ball to the hole, and he's quick and he can hit some really difficult shots despite his size. A.J. Hogard from Michigan State's a transfer to watch. Now, here's the question, guys, and I'll be interested to see this tonight. They may be short 2 of their guards. Grant Huffman and Tyler Tanner got listed on the injury report. That was a surprise to us. Seemed like there's been a lot of flu or this or that going around SEC basketball this day. That's my best guess as for what happened, but that's guessing and not reporting. Those guys are a big part of their bench and what they do. So I think I'll be interested to see if Edwards has his usual game tonight and how deep they really are, because if they don't have Tyler Tanner and they don't have Grant Huffman, that's 2 guys that'll probably give them 15 to 20 minutes each on a typical night, and that would certainly change some of what they do.
It certainly would. And Tyler Tanner specifically, one of those guys who's had one of the funniest stat lines this year because the guy has a lot of assists and has not turned the ball over until the Missouri game, but still the king of the assist-to-turnover ratio. But, Chris, I look at this Vanderbilt team, and the one thing that sticks out like a sore thumb is that they're top 20 in both turnover percentage offensively and defensively. And watching them play defense is a whole lot of fun because they are awesome at playing gaps and forcing turnovers. But when you watch this team play defense, what do you see, and how much has that been a difference compared to some of the last few Vanderbilt coaches?
Well, for a while they were top 5 nationally, I think, in both 2-point percentage and in steal percentage. And those had I think, a pretty good correlation because a lot of those were steals that led to uncontested dunks and layups on the other end. Now, having said that, those have not been as easy to come by in conference play as they were against, Jackson State or whoever they played on a given night. And, that's been a little concerning. That's one reason they are, 1-2 instead of, the 13-1 they were in non-conference. So I think that's something to watch is can they pull that off tonight because they weren't really able to create that style of play against Mississippi State or Missouri. It's way different from Jerry Stackhouse, who frankly should have never had the job, didn't work very hard in it. There really was no identity with them. The guy, really until 4 years into his career here didn't really seem to understand the net and the things that dictate postseason, and then didn't really understand that you couldn't take some games off and drop a game or 2 in pre-conference to subpar opponents. And that might affect you with that NBA mentality of it's a long season and we'll get there at the end. And with Mark Byington, it's been completely different. There's been a sense of urgency since he got here. They did go 13-1 in the non-conference and actually at one point get into the top 30 of the net. I just don't think the approach could have been much different.
Talking to Chris Lee, 24/7 Sports, Gamecocks at Vandy tonight. Again, we'll have it for you right here, 5:30 airtime Eastern, 6 o'clock tip from Memorial. Let me turn you to football before we get you out of here, because it was a heck of a year. Obviously, these two teams, Gamecocks and Commodores, saw one another in Nashville. A big performance for Carolina. Pavia was great in that game, as he was so often. And at least for now, we expect him to be back. I was joking with Elijah. Is that etched in stone, or is that written in NCAA pencil? Tell us more of what the real feeling is on Pavia's return next season.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much etched in stone. One thing I was told that when the judge made that ruling, the fact that the NCAA was going to go to a 5-to-play-5 model was kind of in view. In terms of him coming back here, and that way, that was basically, that's not something the NCAA is going to appeal. Mm-hmm. So he will be playing football next year. He's basically signed with Vanderbilt. I think that was something that knew was coming for a while. Yeah, he'll be back at Vandy, and boy, that'll be fun for a program that just frankly didn't have a lot of fun in the decade that preceded Diego Pavia.
No, and he's been fantastic for the conference and the sport, and you got the bowl win against a pretty good team as well. I love what Clark Lee is doing, and a lot of folks have rolled their eyes at Clark at media days and some of the things that he says, but he's got to say it because he's a coach, but now it's starting to follow through. How different is the feeling this offseason, especially with some of the things that the school is doing to finally, as in a lot of people's opinions, spend the money that is coming in from the Southeastern Conference on facilities and things like that? Is there a real sense that there is a genuine next step that will be taken?
Well, look, if you go back to last year, it just felt legitimately hopeless, because I was looking at what they did, and I was like, they got outscored by 200-something points or whatever it was the year before, and I think they got outscored by at least 17 in all 9 games they played against the Power 5, and Paul Feinbaum comes out with the thing of, is Vandy won its last game, against the Power 5 team, and I think those were kind of quietly in the back of our, a lot of people's minds, maybe some legitimate fears with the way the landscape was headed. But yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, guys, I did not have on my bingo card him turning it around as dramatically as he did this year. Again, a lot of it points to Diego Pavia. A lot of it points to the defense too. And he was the defensive coordinator, was Clark Lee at Notre Dame, and did a fine job there. I think now that you've seen a blueprint, the Pavia model is interesting because it involves a quarterback in a scheme that you don't see much, right? I mean, one of Vanderbilt's distinct advantages is when you prepare, and Georgia Tech had the same thing for a long time, or did have the same thing. It's like preparing, I'm not going to call it a service academy offense, but it's the closest thing to it that you'll find at the Power 5. And that's just not something that you can really replicate very easily, through 1 week of practice. And certainly when you've got a guy as smart as Diego is, and he may be about the smartest football player I've ever seen. If not, he's on the short list. That adds another layer to it. I think they've got a system offensively that if they stick with it, could maybe up their season a little bit more. Usually when Vanderbilt has a 7-6 season like they had, you just got to be like, okay, it felt like a one-off. Tell me why it's not a fluke. Well, now they've got a scheme that might have some staying power. They've got a head coach who's a graduate of the school, who's a defensive-minded coach, and really made their defense a lot better. I think they shaved, 11, 12 points a game off what they did last year, which is really hard to do. So, I still think it's an uphill battle. I still think, with the possible exception of Mississippi State now, because Vanderbilt is spending money, like you said, and they do have billionaire boosters, and that always helps if you can engage those guys. They do have some things in the background that some other schools don't have. They've also got academic requirements. They've also got a school that I think is still in a lot of ways clueless about how to run an athletics program. But they made a lot of steps, and you can't deny that. It was on paper, right? Right. So I think there's a little bit more optimism. I think it's always got to be, the ceiling is always a little bit capped by their own stubbornness, and we know better about how things should be done than everybody else. But there have been some possibilities that put out there in the last year. It's got people excited about writing checks and some things that you need to have some success going forward. So I don't think the floor is maybe as low as I would have thought it was a year ago.
Yeah, I think it's good for the conference, and it's been fun to watch Diego do what he does. Chris, appreciate the time, man. Enjoy the ball game tonight. We'll talk to you down the line.
Hey, thanks, guys.
You bet. Chris Lee, 24/7 Sports, Chris Lee 70 to follow along on Twitter. It's the Postgame Show. 10 minutes in front of 4 o'clock on this Wednesday. Welcome back into the Postgame Show. Jay and Elijah with you. Now, we told you we're going to be out at Pro Swing. Hang on, I got to get over here to do this. You think they changed the time on the no.
Absolutely not.
Nope, they didn't. Anyway.
The real question is, have we been reading it 8 a.m. to 8 a.m.?
And here's the thing. They made changes to add the day because they're adding a day to the tournament at the end of the month, but they didn't change the time. But it's fine. Now we're just teasing here. The first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic coming January 30, 31st, and yes, they added a day, February 1st, to Saturday. Bookings available 8 until 8. That's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. There'll be food. There'll be prizes. There's going to be Pro Swing prizes. There's going to be golf equipment prizes from TaylorMade. There's going to be Gamecock baseball tickets. I don't know what games. That's not up to me.
It doesn't matter. They're tickets.
Yeah, it's tickets to games.
Who doesn't love a nice afternoon over at Founders Park?
Sure. And all you got to do is register. It's $150 for a two-person team. $1,000 first prize, $750 second prize, $500 third prize. 803-528-1617. And again, the brand new Pro Swing on Forest Drive, right across the street from Lowe's. Right next door to Bonefish, if that helps you too. Over in that part of town, Forest Acres. Stop by and see us. We'll be there this Friday, and we'll be there for those 2 days during the week, at least, of the tournament.
Tournament.
So, official SEC reporting, as Chris Lee alluded to. Tyler Tanner, Grant Huffman are listed as questionable for today's game. Alex Hemingway, not to be confused with anybody named Hemingway. There's no G. But I don't think Hemingway plays a whole lot, does he?
Not as much as Tyler Tanner does. Tyler Tanner gets minutes.
In fact, I don't even. Well, the other kid, he's just not even play. He's not even on the active roster. Hemingway, yeah, Huffman, but not Hemingway. So Tanner and Huffman questionable for the Gamecocks. Jamari Thomas, Miles Studi definitely out.
Yes. Big losses.
I haven't looked in the last little bit, but I'm going to right now, Elijah Campbell. It's the same as yesterday. 72.9% the BPI chance for Vanderbilt to win this game. And if you're wondering what the betting lines are, Vandy minus 9.5 and minus 550? Really? Minus 550 on the money line?
That is how much home court advantage is factored into Vegas lines. If there are two even teams, I guarantee you South Carolina would be favored if they're playing here in Columbia. Vanderbilt's good, and I don't want to make the same type of indictment on Vanderbilt. I have some serious questions about Vanderbilt going into this matchup, as in who's guarding Colin Murray-Boyles. And are you going to do what you normally do and not help off of shooters? They don't have significant size. They don't have anyone over 6'8" on the roster.
How much of what Colin went through when he wasn't playing well is on Colin as a percentage?
I would say probably, I'd say maybe 50. I think there's a 50-50.
I do too.
I think there's, because you could tell that when he's engaged and he's ready to put the ball down on the floor and get to the basket, he can do it against anybody. One-on-one against Ian Shefflin, who's a really good defender. Janiah Broom, who's a really solid defender. He's getting to the rim. And I think mentally sometimes when somebody throws more bodies his way, he does go into a pass-first mode, which is most of the time the right play.
Yeah.
Right? But there are some times in the game where it's Colin, bail us out. And
yeah.
I think he's going to have to tap into that mode more than he probably wants to.
Uh-huh.
Like, Colin makes the right basketball play. Very seldomly do I watch a play where I'm like, that's not the right play. Maybe not the execution isn't always there sometimes, but it's mostly the right play.
We'll have a little bit more on this one for you throughout the course of the afternoon, and around 5:15 before we pass the baton to Derek and Judge Manning, we will have the EBPI breakdown of Carolina Vandy. Come back on the other side. Elijah's been looking at some draft projections, some good news for some Gamecocks. We'll get into that for you. More on what's going on around the NFL and college football when the postgame show returns. All right, so holiday season has passed us, but the tightness in the body because of holiday stresses could still remain for a variety of reasons. We get those, right? Well, might be time for you to get into the Joint Chiropractic Centers and get to feeling better real quick. Never been to a chiropractic center before? Well, listen, for just $29, the Joint will have a consultation with you so you can ask questions like, what's up here? What exactly is going on? They're happy to answer those questions. You get the exam, you get the adjustment. Again, just $29. Like it, start to be a member. Then they can see you at the Joint Centers all across the country. Maybe you're traveling for work, for vacation, going to see your favorite team. They'll take care of you. 4 convenient locations here in Columbia: Harbison, Forest Drive, Roberts Branch off Killian, and Sunset Boulevard. Convenient, affordable, maintain a healthy body, prevent reoccurring issues. Tell them we sent you. Learn more online, thejoint.com. Remember, you don't have to feel bad to feel better at The Joint. Four o'clock on this Wednesday afternoon. Welcome back into the Postgame Show. Second hour underway from the Herndon Chevy Studios, downtown Columbia, South Carolina is where we are. We being Elijah Campbell. That's him.
That's me.
I'm Jay Phillips. No, it's you.
Okay.
It's you. And I'm Jay. Appreciate you being with us as we do every day. We do truly appreciate that.
I know I do.
Means a lot.
Helps me pay my bills.
Choices. This is America. You got choices.
That's right. And you chose us.
That's right. Speaking of choices, I think that there are a lot of schools in the Power 4 conferences that would like to make more of their own choices without having others dictate some policies to them. Yesterday, we told you a lot about the American Football Coaches Association putting forth a proposition to the NCAA that would have just one football transfer portal window. Now, the exceptions would be for schools in the playoff, and there are exceptions for graduate transfers, and there are exceptions for football players, really anybody, but football players in this case, since it's the AFCA. When a coach leaves, there's an automatic 30-day window that opens if your coach leaves. So the president of the NCAA, Governor Charlie Baker, has spoken, Elijah. And he has basically, I don't know if he hasn't put the kibosh on this, right? But he says, quote, I think the transfer windows are challenging in part because we need to build them around an academic calendar. Everybody's still going to college. 1% maybe will play pro. It's really important that we not lose sight of that. I get the fact that it's a challenging calendar as it is, and I fully expect that will get thoroughly vetted, as it should, by the appropriate committees. But they've got time to figure that one out. And that was, as you and I discussed this yesterday, that to me was one of the biggest questions. It's like, hey, look, I get it, coaches, but by January 12th, as you are in the middle of the second week of January, which is what that would be, a heavy percentage of schools have started back. And, what happens then? If and that's problematic. So, I still contend that the best overall solution long-term, and this is going to take a lot of hand-wringing, and it's going to take a lot of changing of minds and habits, but the best thing is that if you want to just have one portal, is that you have it starting in the middle of May when most schools are done for the semester. You have it run through the end of May or even into the first week of June. And then by the second week of June is when you have spring ball, if you will. You're gonna have a lot more of an NFL-style calendar there. One of the proposals that our buddy Scott Dockerman put forth in The Athletic was that you would still have something akin to what the NFL has. Now, remember, in the NFL, in the NFL in March and April, I mean, look, you can always go to the facility and work out and stuff. But the bulk of NFL teams at that point in the calendar are worried about the draft. And then in May, you'll have a little mini camp. You don't do anything in pads, and it's usually for the rookies and the free agents, some of the veterans. But, your big-time stars, they might come show up. And so many of the guys now live in town all year long, not like the old days where you didn't have to show up again until July, Just do whatever the heck you wanted from January to July. And coaches were like, why are you so fat, man?
I've been eating for 6 months.
Right, So college could do something similar, but instead of having mini camp in May or June after the draft, you would have a little mini camp without pads in March or April like you do now, but you wouldn't have the full-on contact. You wouldn't have scrimmages. And then you could do and you may not have a spring game anymore, which I don't think is a real big loss. That's my opinion.
It's not like they're making hand over fist money with
No,
those.
well, geez, at Carolina it's free.
There's no gate.
How many schools do charge? Now you have Cokes and popcorns and beers and hot dogs, and if you want,
that's about it.
Yeah, you want to buy you buy the little guy a T-shirt, or something. You can do that, or if you want to buy yourself a T-shirt, that's totally up to you. But I just the academic calendar has to play into this, and I think coaches they mentioned that yesterday. Like, well, this is what we're trying to do here because, well, we'll see. Beyond that, and I'm going to read another quote to you, Elijah Campbell, and then I'm going to have you. This is English, so when I ask you to translate it, I'm not asking you to translate a foreign language. Okay. This is a quote from Governor Baker on the topic of the Power Four conferences likely asking for an even greater level of autonomy. You with me?
Okay.
This is from CBS Sports, and then I'm going to read the quote. The report says the power conferences recently submitted a proposal that would allow for them to take greater control over rules, proposals, and even potentially national championships. It is unclear if it will garner enough support to be approved. And then there's a quote from Governor Baker, the president of the NCAA. Quote, "We get a bunch of submissions from all kinds of people that we asked for. That's one of the ones that got submitted." So,
you want to know the translation?
Yes.
We'll see.
I mean, it's like, that's all you got, man?
Yeah, I mean.
Is we get, no, not you, him. Like, we get a bunch of stuff. Sir. There's the veiled, kind of whispered threat right now that if these schools that are making 90% of your money don't get more of what they want, you might not be making any percent of any of their money anymore. Now, again, it's a quiet, veiled threat that I hope is not followed through, and no one's actually said we're going to leave.
It's a quiet, veiled, empty threat because they also need the NCAA.
They need it back.
I think Charlie Baker will win this game of chicken. I think he knows he's going to win this game of chicken.
This article from CBS Sports goes on to say, this is from John Talty, by the way, the NCAA's governance structure will continue to be a hot topic as powerful leaders look to wrest more control away from their smaller counterparts. And in this article as well is that, for instance, even with the academic calendar situation with the transfer window, it would have to go to the D1 Council, and the D1 Council is made up of at least one representative of every conference in D1. And that's been part of the problem that we've heard from Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti and others like them at the highest levels. And I keep coming back to it. And whether it sounds mean or not, I don't know. I'm just here to report on what a guy like Greg said. And you know where I'm going with this, Elijah. Yeah, we can't have Florida Atlantic telling Florida what to do. We can't have Central Michigan telling Michigan what to do. I think what he even means is we can't have them having an equal vote in certain situations. Now, for now, they do. And so I'll be curious to know more about what the lobbying effort is like before any votes are taken. But I just thought it was kind of funny that Governor Baker was like, oh, we get all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like saying, hey, listen, we got one, a guy wanted to sell T-shirts. And we got another one where they wanted to hang banners, with cheerleaders. And we're like, yeah, we can't do that anymore. He
lumps it in.
Right.
And at this point, if I'm him, I feel the same way because don't we call them the Autonomy 4? It was the Autonomy 5.
Right.
If they have the autonomy to do it and they don't do it, why are they submitting a proposal to do more stuff that they already have the chance to do? I'd be annoyed with that too.
And I'd
be annoyed with that too. If I'm him, I'm like, whatever.
Well, I need you,
the guy deals
sir.
with enough on a day-to-day basis, and it's like, hey, we're going to submit you a proposal so we can do the stuff we're already allowed to do. I think I would give a pretty short answer to when I was asked about it.
Yeah, again, I need you, and I'm saying this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I need you, when we go back to Atlanta this year for Media Days, to remind me when we have the commissioner come sit down, like, Jay, don't forget to ask him why they don't just bleep and do it. Because that, to me, is the number one sticking point. You've heard me say this on these airwaves. Mm-hmm. You've heard me say this to you when we talk off air. Those of you who listen to this show routinely have heard me say, if you've been the Autonomy 5, now 4 for so long, why aren't you using it? Because they're not, and it drives me nuts.
Can't blame the small schools anymore.
Now, again, I don't know.
I've been able to for a while.
I don't know for sure where certain lines are drawn when it comes to where the autonomy is no longer applicable, if that's the right way to say it. Mm-hmm. I imagine there are some things like, hey, we're not going to have, and I'm just throwing out a hypothetical now, we're not going to have a separate set of on-field football rules for the power schools. So I don't, and I don't know in terms of policy and rules. Okay, well, y'all have some control over this, but not over this, and that's clearly the case.
Yeah,
I don't know where all those things are. But in my personal opinion, I haven't really seen them take much advantage of anything from an autonomy perspective. I not enough anyway, and I'm with you on that. Like, well, just go do it then. Well, just go do it. I still contend that perhaps a fourth level of NCAA schools may need to be created. I don't know exactly what that looks like anymore. Do we do something? Let me ask you this. Would it be better? I'm almost getting ready to answer my own question. Would it be better to see Division I simply split the way it is for football already? In other words, and do that for everything. Like, in other words, do we need a certain subset in basketball as well?
I'll answer your question with a question. Do you still play for the same championships?
And there again, that's
because if you
just
play
it.
for the same championships, then what's the bleeping use of splitting?
So do you maybe take, instead of 32 conferences, we have a Power 4. In basketball, let's say we have a Power 5 for sure, Big East, but the American is good. The Mountain West has had some good teams. You'll get the occasional team that pops from somewhere else. A10, something like that. A10's got great basketball.
Hey, that's a really good league.
It is, man. It's fun to watch. But there again, okay, so let's take 20, and that is your new championship structure for the highest level? Would that still be an entertaining tournament in March?
It's not the same.
No UMBC beating Virginia. If
you would have none of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
No more. And I don't know where the line. Could you even? Again, I'm just talking out loud here. Do not promotion and some form of promotion and relegation for conferences based on certain analytics. I don't know.
And that's where you get into the weeds.
Yeah, it's just right now it's so unwieldy. But I don't when again. 20% of the schools are making 80% of the money, but 80% of the money, or excuse me, 80% of the schools have the control of the vote. It's a weird dynamic. And so there is going to be something that has to give. I just don't know what it looks like.
Well, and any structure too, people like the structure of the NCAA is there also to protect the existence of all of its schools too.
Right.
And it would
Absolutely.
It wouldn't be doing its due diligence if it gives certain schools the power to deplete the other's existence, even if those schools making the money does supplement or does trickle down and benefit, your Woffords and Furmans of the world when they get those fat checks for coming to Williams-Brice and playing whenever they do. And I totally get that. But at the same time, like if you're all in the NCAA, which you are, that is part of your obligation to help other member schools and to be able to benefit the whole. So any type of action that does take away something that you already have is the NCAA not doing its duty to protect a lot of those schools that really a lot of them fund their athletic departments from the NCAA tournament. Middle Tennessee State University broke even in how much it was making each year when they went on a 3 straight year run of making the NCAA tournament. And they won 2 of those games to go to the second round. That TV money was enough for them to break even for the first time in like a decade.
Yeah, it's a big deal,
means
man.
a lot.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
And if you take away that moneymaker, then the NCAA itself isn't doing itself any favors.
Right. And I don't want that money to dry up for them either. And I've said that many times. I don't want to see these things go away, but there has to be something that change. I mean, right now, again, it's just, the word I'll use, unwieldy, and I'm not the only one using that kind of thing. We'll see. NCAA convention going on, AFCA convention going on, so we got a lot of things business-wise to discuss. Some Gamecocks in the draft, potentially. Elijah's been looking at that. We'll touch on that on the other side as the postgame show rolls on. We're into the new year. College football playoffs are winding down, but the pro football playoffs heating up. The big game will be here soon enough. We were just talking about basketball tournament action. That's coming your way as well. You're ready to watch all those things better than ever. Then it is time for you to call Integrated Media. Amazing state-of-the-art HD TVs. Any size you can pretty much fit in your house. They'll get it done for you. Lifelike sound from in-ceiling or in-wall speakers with Dolby Atmos, or the flexibility of a complete Sonos system that you can move around and suit your needs. That's right, they're wireless. Plus, you can upgrade your Wi-Fi capabilities for better streaming, better gaming, better working from home. Make sure all your devices run smoothly 24/7. And even think about outdoor systems because, it'll be cold for like another couple of weeks. And then it's back to being nice around here. 803-948-8327. Brighten the new year with everything you watch. Do it better with Integrated Media. Welcome back into the Postgame Show. Jay and Elijah with you. Appreciate you being with us. Our buddy Alan Cole will join us in just a few. We'll continue to preview Carolina Vandy and get Alan's thoughts on tonight's game. It's game 4, so it's not must win, but we're getting to that. Boy, you better win some of these.
It's about as close as you can get to must win. I mean, how many more winnable road games you got on the schedule? Not a ton.
Not a ton.
I'm telling you.
I tell you, everybody's getting better, man.
I would say this might be your most winnable road game. You can still win at Oklahoma on Saturday. Not saying you can't do that, but Oklahoma's better than Vanderbilt. Your next game's at Georgia. Really good, winnable, but I would say Georgia is less winnable than Vanderbilt. Kentucky is really bleeping good. They got another top 11 ranked win last night. Then you got to go at Florida. That's a legit top 5 team. Even with the loss last night, still contend. Really, the only other game where you're on the road where I'm like, that's the more winnable than Vanderbilt is LSU. Mm-hmm. And LSU can play a little bit. John Calipari learned that the hard way last night. They went to Baton Rouge and got beat and took an L. But yeah, I would say this is the second most winnable road game you have in the SEC.
We'll touch on those things again with Alan, and just reminder, 5:30 airtime, so we'll be out of here a little bit earlier than normal today, and 6 o'clock Eastern time tip. Again, they're playing at 5 o'clock Central. Who are the ad wizards who came up with this one? In the meantime, Dane Brugler of The Athletic has put together a 2-round mock draft, just so as not to bury the lead. There are no Gamecocks in the first round. But he does have, I guess, a couple in the second round, right? Or just the one?
I've only spotted just the one.
Just the one. My bad. Nick Emenwari to the New York Football Jets.
At 42.
God bless you, Nick.
Now,
at least if Nick goes to the Jets, he'll make some money and he get to live in New York for a little bit.
That'd be cool. It would be on TV a lot.
Yeah.
On national TV a lot. You'll be on TV every game, but national TV a lot. But there are a few other mock drafts that I've been able to find that I found very interesting in terms of placement for Carolina players. Tankathon, one of my favorite websites, they do a mock draft daily. As of now, they have TJ Sanders going 47 to the Cardinals, Nick Emenwari going 48 to the Dolphins, and then Kyle Kennard going 50 to the Seattle Seahawks. So that is 3 Carolina players from 47 to 50.
I can't wait to start asking people as we get closer to the draft and to some of the, the combine and some of the visits and pro day. Is Kyle Kennard, how's he being viewed? Relative to winning the Nagurski and being an all-conference performer and being on some All-American lists and doing what he did. Is he going to be seen as sort of the steal kind of a pick? Like, man, you got a steal right there.
I think so, because he might not be as physically imposing as an Abdul Carter or something, but he was every bit as productive on a football field.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I'm really interested in, is seeing exactly where he falls and how he's going to be able to do at the next level. I think he's going to be fantastic. And I think if the Seattle Seahawks get him in this mock draft at 50, I think they've got them some really good value.
Yeah. I agree. For what it's worth, Dane Brugler, has Cam Ward going number 1. He says the Titan. Now, this is his opinion. So you take all these things that we all know with a grain of salt. He says, in this mock, the Titans decide Ward is an upgrade over their current quarterback situation. His loose play style won't be for everyone, but his ability to create explosive plays and the gradual improvements he has shown each year are promising aspects of his profile. Some scouts have compared Ward's upside to that of Steve McNair, which would be, and then this is the corny part, music to the ears of fans in Nashville. See what he did there?
Never heard that one before.
And then he's got Abdul Carter going to Cleveland.
To pair up with Myles Garrett.
And you and I talked about that yesterday.
How terrifying that would be of a defense to face.
He doesn't say here that he believes they should trade, but he does say of the Titans, the ideal scenario would be to trade back 2 spots with the Giants. Now, that's his opinion on what the Giants could offer or anything else. I'm in that camp. Not so much. I'm less concerned about who they may ultimately trade with. But my opinion, you either trade the pick, which I think is the best thing to do.
Yeah.
And get more for it. You'll still get a high first-round pick. Or you take Abdul Carter.
Who is the best, probably the best overall player in this draft.
You find a quarterback that's either backing up right now. And I wonder too, and we'll talk more with football experts about this, but has the Sam Darnold story, the Baker Mayfield story, and a few others begun to convince enough folks around the National Football League that, yes, our quarterback is out there, and he has been watching film. He has been practicing against NFL guys. He's now 25, 26 years old, 27 years old. Things are cyclical. And I'm just starting to wonder if that's where some people might be. I don't know. And again, if you put more around Will Levis, could he be better? I'm not suggesting that the Titans need to make Will Levis their quarterback, but is he in the same situation as a guy like Bryce Young, in a relative sense at least, where there's just not a lot around him? There's a lot of questions there. But I would still lean towards trading the pick. He's got Travis Hunter going to the Giants at 3. A couple other big ones here for you. Shador at 6 to the Raiders. I mean, you know what?
I hate that for him.
I
hate it for him.
He's got Brock Bowers, man.
Which, I mean, would be nice. Would be nice.
Panther fans, he has Jalen Walker from Georgia. He's got Malachi Starks going right after that, by the way, to the Saints. So, anyway, check it out. Cowboy fans, Luther Burden to Missouri, or from Missouri to and then let's see, where do you, my Denver Broncos, Ashton Jeanty at number 20. And James Pierce to the Bucks. That'd be good. Anyway, check it out at theathletic.com.
James Pierce to the Bucks would be scary because they already have a pretty good
I like James
defensive
Pierce,
front.
I like James Pierce. He was good. Speaking of that, Tennessee's defensive coordinator, Tim Banks, will be hanging around. Kind of the same situation, in my opinion. You and I discussed this earlier, like Clayton White here. Like, it might be some overtures if you want to see what's up. Head coaching wise,
he's interviewed for some. Interviewed for the MTSU job last year.
But if you don't want one of those gigs right now, or just how things work out for you and the family, we'll give you a big bump.
He deserves it.
Yeah.
I mean, that defense has saved their rear ends the last 2 years.
So Tim Banks gets a big raise to stay at Tennessee, just like Clayton did here in Columbia when he got his raise last month. All right, we'll come back on the other side of the break. Our buddy Alan Cole, GamecockScoop.com. He'll be covering tonight's game in Nashville. We'll get into his thoughts on how the Gamecocks prepare for life without a couple of starters and how important this one is. Alan joins us when the Postgame Show returns.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to, they're causing some issues on the roadways, starting with one on Highway 1 at Augusta Road near I-20. Got another one on Highway 6 at US 1 near East Main Street. Industrial Drive at South Lake Drive. Oakcrest Road near North Trenham Road. Piney Grove Road at I-26. St. Andrews Road at I-26. And lastly, one on US 378 at I-20.
Time to talk some more Carolina hoops. Get into a little football as well with our buddy Alan Cole on the beat for GamecockScoop.com, the Rivals site. He'll be covering tonight's game. Always appreciate Alan's time. Mr. Cole, good to have you. Let's real quick. Let me start you with a little football here. School obviously starting back this week, and really, by tomorrow, Friday, if you're not in school, you're not in school. Do you feel like portal activity for South Carolina football is done for now?
Done or very close to it. I'll never slam the door completely just because I don't know exactly who might, they signed Monday, but their paperwork hadn't been processed, anything like that. But done or close to it, at least till the spring window. You got to remember those 15 days in April where kids don't have to enroll for this semester. You're looking at the fall of 25. But, yeah, I think done or close to it. You got those 13 names in there.
How is this basketball team beginning to live without Miles Studi and Jamari Thomas?
I hate using the term addition by subtraction. That makes it sound like it's good, someone's hurt, and it's not. But I don't know, Elijah, you were sitting next to me Saturday. You might agree or disagree. I thought the offense flowed better on Saturday. I thought you don't really have a true point guard right now, and that obviously is a problem. But you also don't have one player kind of slowing the offense down. Jamari is a shoot-first point guard. I don't think that's quite a fit with what Lamont wants to do. The numbers show it. You had your SEC high in assists. You had your second fewest turnovers of any game this season against Auburn. So I thought you were able to get to your offense and flow a little more, even though you do lose some shooting and a little bit of floor space when you don't have Jamari.
Yeah, I mean, the Morris minutes I thought were really good. I thought Morris defensively played one of his best games that he's had all year, and you're going to have to require him to keep doing that, especially against Vanderbilt tonight and Oklahoma on Saturday, which Jeremiah fears is a pretty big assignment for either him or Jacoby, whoever has to do it. But I think one of the big things offensively, too, is they were forced kind of to rely more on Colin Murray-Boyles. And Colin's your best player, and Colin was able to take, Janai Broome and Dylan Cardwell, Chaney Johnson, whoever was on him, to the rim at will. You're playing a team in Vanderbilt tonight that doesn't have a player over 6'8". How much more of that do you think we see?
I think that should be the game plan. I think you saw what Colin can do when he's not getting double on every catch, when he's not – when the offense is running through him. I think last time I was on here, we talked about, kind of these 3, 4, 5 minute stretches where Colin just doesn't get a touch, and it's not a way to live if you're this team. And I think maybe Saturday showed that, you just got to force feed the ball to your best player, especially, like you said, a game like tonight where Vanderbilt's not big. Vanderbilt does not have a matchup, even one matchup for Colin like Auburn had 2 or 3 of them. So, I think that's the way to go. And if you're going to actually get out of Nashville with a win tonight, I think it's going to need Colin. I mean, he scored his career high against Vandy last year. Let's not forget, too. So he's got some history in this match. I know it's a different Vandy roster, but I think this could be a big game for Colin.
All right, Alan, I'm going to ask you a question that I posed to Elijah and to a larger degree the audience at the top of the show. So hear me out, and then you have as much time as you need here. Well, you don't, but you have a lot of minutes. You'll be fine. So we saw South Carolina go to Starkville and play poorly and get waxed. We saw South Carolina missing 2 starters play its best game, as we just alluded to, at least in a lot of people's minds, against Auburn. Last night, we saw Auburn down Janai Broome for the entire game, dismantle Mississippi State. When you look at last night and look at those 2 performances that Carolina had against each of those teams, what does last night tell you about South Carolina?
That's a good question. I think it tells you that whatever the worst this team is capable of looking was probably that Mississippi State game. Just every asset, offense, defense, turnovers, not shooting the ball well, not moving it well, not guarding, all of that. So I think you kind of saw what the floor is for South Carolina. And then I also think you saw, first of all, Auburn's still really good, and even without Janai Broome. And you saw that South Carolina, if you use your best players, and this is kind of what Lamont's always said since even that first year when you knew they weren't going to be very good. If you guard well, if you're going to stay in every game you play, I think maybe that's what I take away. That, like, Mississippi State's a very good defensive team. Mississippi State did not guard well last night, and that game was over before halftime. So I think it starts on defense. That's going back to what Elijah said about Morris and Jacoby picking up guards. But if you defend well, you have a chance to beat anybody, yes, even in this league, even with how tough it is, even on the road.
And one of the stories from the game against Auburn were the minutes that Arden Conyers and Benjamin Bosens-Verdonk got you, too. I mean, Ben played 10 minutes, but you got a lot out of him in those 10 minutes. He rebounded really well, kept a really good offensive rebounding team off the glass, was able to defend well against Janai Broome. There were a couple instances where there were one-on-one matchups and Janai didn't score. It's one of those things where Ben's going to have to play more minutes. Your bench isn't going to be super deep because of these injuries, but between him and Arden Conyers, I feel like you're going to have to get some really good minutes out of both of those guys.
I'm fascinated by Arden just because I think you have a younger, obviously the redshirt freshman version of kind of what Miles Studi can do, right? Like the defense isn't quite there. I thought he defended okay on Saturday, but spot-up shooting, he hit 3 of them on Saturday. You can see them trying to get into the corners. Just, yeah, he's not there. He's not going to create his own shot. He's not going to take someone off the dribble, but you could have him out there to hit some shots, to keep the floor space, to, like I said, stick him in the corner and he can attempt 6 or 7 threes a game and hit 3 or 4 of them. Like, you replace a lot of what you lose with Miles Studi. I think he had a little more athleticism, too, with Arden Conyers. So I'm very bullish on him. I think these minutes are going to be great for him and his development, just the ones he wasn't getting early in the season.
Talking to Alan Cole at GamecockScoop.com. Carolina Vandy tonight at 6. Again, Elijah and I will be getting out of here a little bit early. 5:30 airtime with Judge Manning and Derek Scott. All right, so another thought exercise for you, sir. Let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being must win. I'm not going to let you say 10, and I wouldn't say 10 either because it's not there yet with only game 4 of an 18-game slate. But in terms of must-win ability, if you will, all right, how close to 10, and you can use decimal points if you want, how close to 10 is this game tonight for South Carolina?
You're talking about, like, trying to get to the tournament or trying to do what last year's team did, right? Like, by that scale?
Something along those lines, yeah.
Like 9.9. I mean, I don't know what we're talking about in terms of a long term if they're 0-4 in the league. And keep in mind that's an 0-4 with, you still got to play Kentucky. You still got to play Tennessee. You've got Florida and Mississippi State coming back to you next week. Like, Vanderbilt's improved from last year, but Vanderbilt's not as good as any of the 3 teams you just saw. I don't think they're even close. They've lost 2 in a row in the league. Their 2 players who are in their rotation are questionable. Like, if you're actually going to talk about pulling this thing back and having a conversation in March, I don't really know how you're put it this way. If you need 9 SEC wins to get in that conversation, I don't know what your path to 9 is if tonight's not one of them and you're starting in an 0-4 hole.
Yeah, I mean, it's brutal down the stretch. I think we were just talking about that earlier. In terms of winnable road games, it's one of the reasons why tonight is such a big deal, is because in terms of winnable road games, this is, probably your second most. I mean, I like some of the stuff LSU's done this year. I mean, LSU certainly showed John Calipari that it can be a little harder than it looks to win at the Maravich Center.
Is this the most, if only because, in all seriousness, it's at 5 o'clock local time on a Wednesday? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there is some weirdness to that.
That applies, yeah.
Yeah, I think so, too. And that's maybe you catch Vanderbilt sleeping, too. I don't know. And that certainly goes both ways. Both teams have to play at that same time. But, I mean, there's another thing, too, Alan. I think one of the biggest stories coming into the season was you being able to steal Cam Scott or get him to flip him from Texas. Haven't gotten to see much of him this year. I know there have been some defensive struggles, but what's kind of the understanding that you have that maybe he hasn't been able to get on the floor even after some of the injuries that they've had?
I think it's twofold. It's one, you just hit it right there, defensive struggles. And, we talked about, like, if you can't guard, you're not going to play for Lamont. And some of it's just true freshman woes and learning. But Cam's not there right now to be able to take on an SEC wing one-on-one. And I think he's going to give up more than he scores for you with where he is right now. And then, two, Arden Conyers is playing better than him right now. And it doesn't mean you can't get Cam Scott involved. It doesn't mean you're going to see 0 minutes for Cam Scott like you did on Saturday. But with what Arden Conyers did Saturday, and I think to some extent did against Alabama last Wednesday, I think he's ahead of Cam Scott in the pecking order right now.
Alan, do you, even if when Jamari comes back, I tell you, let me rephrase the question real quick. I got about a minute left here for you. What are you hearing prognosis-wise on both these guys, Stute and Thomas, and how accustomed to each other in this current iteration do the Gamecocks need to get?
Thomas, I still think you're looking at into February. That was the initial prognosis. I've heard the same. The Stute one's harder to gauge just because it's blood clots. So you're on blood thinners, right? And that's even if the I'm not a doctor. The clotting of the blood, we're going to call it that, goes down. Blood thinners still take away some of your energy. You have to get back into basketball shape. So I think that one's a lot harder to gauge just because it's going to be, okay, even if he's healthy, how healthy is he to play basketball versus healthy as a human? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm still planning on at least a month with these two guys out probably.
So then to answer that second part of the question, then they need this group needs to get used to each other now.
Yeah, and that goes back to what I said about, moving the ball a little bit more without Jamari. You have some different point guard looks in there. I definitely think that what you saw Saturday is kind of what it needs to look like going forward.
Appreciate you as always, sir. Enjoy the ball game. We'll talk soon.
Appreciate it. You too.
That's Alan Cole, Alan _ two of them. Cole, C-O-L-E, on the Twitters. GamecockScoop.com is the website. We'll have an abbreviated drive around the SEC. Got a little football news and, again, some upsets last night on the hardwood. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Welcome back in. Typically, we have our drive around the SEC around 5:30, but at 5:30 today, we'll be giving way to Derek Scott and Judge Manning for Carolina basketball. So we'll take a look around the conference right now. Welcome back in. Jay and Elijah with you. Basketball last night, Auburn all over Mississippi State. We've mentioned that a few times today as it relates to Carolina and what we could learn about Carolina from a 22-point Auburn win last night in their gym without Janai Broome. You know, again, did Auburn have an off night in Columbia or an off day in Columbia? Did Carolina have an off day in Starkville? Were those games very indicative of who these teams are across the board? And it's sports. You know, again, I'm not sure. But what I am sure of is that no matter what Auburn may or may not have done to their liking in Columbia, and let's face it, they won the basketball game. That's all that matters. They reasserted their dominance last night. And I've seen State play a couple of times. You've seen State play a couple of times. Last night, Auburn, especially in the first half, just basically said, I don't even know why you're here. They
discarded them.
It was
last
impressive,
night.
man. It was impressive.
Chaney Johnson, dude, like that's a guy that Auburn's going to look different. No, not to just sound like Chris Collinsworth. Now, here's a guy that makes your team look different, right? I don't think it's a coincidence that Auburn last night had one of their season lows in terms of raw assist totals. They only had 9 assists for the entire game. That is good for 27% of their made baskets. That's what happens when you don't have Janai Broome in there. That's his impact. But now these guys can go off the dribble a little bit more. The offense can look a little bit different because Chaney Johnson is a more explosive athlete than what Janai Broome is. So he brings you something a little different. But in the 34 minutes that he gave Auburn last night, 4 blocks and a steal as well. So his presence is made on the defensive end of the floor, grabbed 2 offensive rebounds, and kept a really good Mississippi State team off of the boards defensively. He just brings you something different than what Janai Broome did. And while Auburn, I think, is, clearly you're going to miss the guy who is one of the 2 front runners for National Player of the Year. Not saying losing Janai Broome makes you better or worse. It does make them a little different. And I think Auburn showed last night how they can look different and still be one of the best offenses in college basketball, if not the best. They're still number 1 on KenPom. They still put up 1.24 points per possession against a really good Mississippi State defense.
Meanwhile, instead of Auburn saying to State, I don't even know why you're here, last night Alabama basically said to Mississippi, I wish you weren't here.
I call it the anti-Pink Floyd.
I tell you, Ole Miss wins in Tuscaloosa by 10. They were down at halftime. But, y'all, the Ole Miss defense was spectacular in the second half. Here's the stat of the game, Elijah Campbell. Mississippi turned the ball over 7 times. Alabama turned the ball over 21 times last night. And the bulk of those were because of how Chris Beard had his team playing defense. Bama actually shot better from the floor than Ole Miss did, and neither team shot great from 3. It was the defense in the second half where Ole Miss outscored Alabama by 14 points.
Defense and defensive rebounding. What's the thing that we've talked about when it pertains to Alabama this year? They're not as good of a three-point shooting team in terms of percentage made as they have been in years past. That's just not their forte this year. Last night they were 5 of 20, 25%, so they were even worse from 3 than they normally are. But what makes Alabama still an efficient offense? They are an elite offensive rebounding team. You want to guess how many offensive rebounds they had last night? 4.
Yeah.
They had 4 offensive rebounds. Malik Dia for Ole Miss, the Belmont transfer, had as many offensive rebounds by himself as Alabama had as a unit last night, grabbing only 12.5% of their missed shots. That made a world of difference in this game. Oh, yeah, and Dia had 15 defensive rebounds to go with his 23 points. That's a guy, too, that made such a difference in this game without even having to score the ball because you already did a good enough job defensively around the perimeter and near the basket to make sure that Alabama didn't just lob dunk you to death. You also did enough to make sure they don't just get a ton of offensive rebounds and second chance points, which they have killed teams with this year, and you were able to create your own second chances for your team. So that was a massive performance from Dia last night, and I think Mississippi Ole Miss is now on the radar of I believe it because I have now seen it.
No, I think that was a very, very big win, a statement type win
on the road.
Yeah, no doubt for Ole Miss last night. Kentucky, no real issues across the board with A&M. They win by 12 at home to the Cats, 81-69, especially dominant in the second half. LSU gets their first win, keeps Arkansas winless. Tigers win 78-74. But maybe as much as Ole Miss was the upset of the night in a lot of people's minds, Missouri dominant in the first half. Florida came almost all the way back in the second half. Missouri with a big shot late wins by 1 point in Gainesville, 83-82.
Yeah.
And they're now 3-1 in conference play, are the Missouri Tigers.
That shows exactly how much a hot shooting first half can carry you throughout the game. I'm looking at the box score right now because they had a lot of guys step up and hit threes. Caleb Grill hit some bat bleep crazy heat check threes last night with a hand in his face coming off stagger screens.
You were showing me some of his highlights, and I was like, tell me this kid went to a 1A school in a town of 5,000, and all he does is shoot hoops.
He is from Iowa, I believe. I believe he was a local Iowa kid. I'm pulling up. No, Wichita, Kansas. But he did start his career at Iowa State. Played only 9 games for Missouri last year. Was out for the year, and that's really one of the main reasons why they were winless in conference play. Missouri showed a little something last night, too.
Yeah. Tonight, beyond the Carolina game, Georgia is at Tennessee. That has some interest.
That will be a good game.
Texas
no
and
over.
Oklahoma tip off at 10 o'clock Eastern time.
SEC basketball.
I don't know who's doing this. We'll have those football SEC notes for you as part of the headlines coming up top of the hour. You are listening to the Postgame Show.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to that are causing some issues on the roadways, starting with one over on Platte Springs Road, causing some minor traffic backup. Got one on Highway 1 at Augusta Road near I-20, one on Highway 6 at US 1 near East Main Street, Industrial Drive at South Lake Drive, Oak Crest Road near North Trenham Road, Piney Grove at I-26, one on St. Andrews Road at I-26, and US 378 at I-20. Lastly, we have an accident that was just reported on US 76 near Columbia Avenue.
You know what? After like 2 years, whatever it's been of that sounder,
it never gets old.
It just doesn't, man.
It's always still really funny.
Touching my earpiece like this. Welcome back into a final hour and abbreviated. You know what? The final half hour.
There you go.
Of the Postgame Show on this Wednesday. He's Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. We appreciate you being with us. It's abbreviated because we will give way to Carolina basketball. The men in Nashville tonight, depending on how you want to call it, today or tonight. It's a 5 o'clock local time, Central Time tip, 6 o'clock Eastern. But Derek and Judge Manning on the call
here. A happy hour
here.
tip, if you will.
That's right. Happy hour basketball,
zone.
According to our good friend John Nichols. That's right, who texted us last week. We were asking about the Carolina women when they played on a Thursday at 5 o'clock.
Yeah,
now,
we're stealing that. That's
that one we at least understood why that game was moved to late afternoon. It was because it was on ESPN2, and I think they had one of the they have like the different casts for the playoff game.
Yes, so they had to free up some games.
They had to free up the deuce for that one, and so they played at 5 o'clock, and that made sense. But I asked Elijah earlier, and he did confirm there are no college football playoff games today. There are no NFL playoff games today. The NBA and the NHL are not yet in the postseason, and we couldn't think of any other pertinent sporting events that make this one playable at 5 o'clock Central Time, 6 o'clock Eastern.
We did have a suggestion. Barry in Charleston did call.
Okay.
He suggested that maybe the earlier start time is to make way for all of the games that are on the SEC network tonight, because Carolina Vanderbilt is at 6 Eastern tonight, and then on the SEC network right after that, I believe at 8 is going to be Georgia at Tennessee, and then at 10 is Texas at Oklahoma.
Well,
but
unfortunately,
even then, I would like to argue with them with the SEC network. If that's what you want to do, that's totally fine. But I would recommend having, I don't know, making the Eastern time zone games the first ones played.
Yes, that's what I would have done as well. But Barry, you're right. That's what it is. But again, last night's TV schedule for, dare I say, a better slate of games was weird.
Because they had 3 really good games going on at the same time.
You had Kentucky, you had Auburn, and you had Bama all tipping off at the same time.
Because now, the way I watch basketball, I want to focus on what's in front of me at the same time. I try to watch it like a hawk, and I can't watch multiple basketball games at once until it's the NCAA tournament, and then I have a little more.
I did last night. I used my YouTube TV multicast.
It's an awesome feature. It's a great feature.
And I had those 3 games I just mentioned from the SEC and the Xavier Nova game.
Oh, that was a fantastic game.
I had those 4 on. I was listening primarily once it got really good to Ole Miss at Alabama. But I jumped around a little bit. But Auburn was in total control. Kentucky, it was good. And I mean, nothing against the Big East. I love Big East basketball, but I was more, for what I do, in tune with the SEC stuff. So I didn't really pay any audio attention to the Nova game. But anyway, that's what I did last night. So that That was fun.
It is.
I
wish
watch.
they staggered those. Stagger.
Yeah,
better
absolutely.
games.
Absolutely.
Kills me.
We'll have a full EBPI breakdown. That's the Elijah Basketball Percentage Index breakdown of Carolina Vandy coming up for you inside of 15 minutes before we give way to the network.
A dribble handoff, if you will.
That's right. In the meantime, congratulations to Lenora Sellers, selected as the 2024 National Freshman Offensive Player of the Year by the Football Writers Association of America. The freshman from Florence, third team All-SEC, 65% of his passes completed, 2,274 yards, 17 scores, 655 on the ground. With another, 7 rushing touchdowns? Yeah. Tied for second in the SEC amongst quarterbacks. 2-time winner this season of the SEC Offensive Player of the Week and a 2-time recipient of the Freshman of the Week award. So congratulations to Lenora Sellers, again, the National Freshman Offensive Player of the Year. And we joked a little earlier. I say joked. We discussed. One other thing I didn't bring up that I did see, and again, it's on Twitter. It's fans, so whatever. I think it was Ohio State fans. Jeremiah Smith was probably, I don't know, I don't have the voting tally here. I'm going to assume Jeremiah Smith was probably the runner-up for this award. Let's just say that he was, whether he was or not.
Because that makes the most sense.
Yeah. But he was a true freshman. And so I did see some Ohio State fans saying it shouldn't go to a redshirt freshman.
They're still freshmen.
I was like, man, he hardly got in last year, and the rules are the rules.
Yeah. If you're a redshirt freshman, you're still eligible for the award.
So, and again, it isn't like some fly-by-night group. Again, this isn't like the 1930s Alabama championships from Aunt Mamie's Garden Club that gave them the national title. This is the Football Writers Association of America.
Some very talented men and women who know ball.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. This is what they do. Just saying. And again, I know we're local around here, and anyway, way to go, Lenores.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
An awesome honor.
He earned it, man.
Especially considering who you beat, because there were some incredibly talented freshmen this year, including a true freshman on your own team.
Yeah, he earned
and
it.
Dylan Stewart.
There you go. By the way, in addition to Lenores, the freshman defensive player of the year was Notre Dame corner Leonard Moore. And keeping it in state for 2 of these awards. How about that? The special teams player of the year as a freshman was Clemson's Nolan Hauser, their young kicker.
Yeah, how about that?
There you go. A little rivalry right there.
2 of the best freshmen in college football.
Yeah, why not?
Winning awards in the same state.
Yeah, there you go. So congrats to all. All right, continuing our integrated media headlines of the day, and I promised you I'd carry this over from the drive around the SEC. 2 big names moving on from the SEC and into the NFL draft. The first, and neither of these are surprises, Trevor Etienne, the Georgia running back and Florida transfer. His brother, of course, played at Clemson, and he plays for the Jags now. This past season, Trevor with Georgia ran for 609 yards, also caught 32 passes, which I think is really going to endear him to a lot of NFL teams.
Certainly.
He missed a bunch of games. Really, in a lot of ways, he missed about a third of their season. A couple of games completely outright he missed, and a couple other games I know he was just really banged up. And when you have a rib injury and you're a running back, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that when dudes are hitting you in the torso, it hurts.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Not going to feel good.
And, you and I were talking,
tickle.
and I'll just quick insight on yours truly. I got some kind of back muscle pull thing going on, and I likened it to when you have one of those rib injuries and you can hardly breathe. Like if you have a rib injury and you're running back and you can hardly breathe anyway and you're trying to huff and puff, and you got 260-pound men slamming into you.
Throwing their bodies at you.
But he had a solid season. It's going to be interesting to see how Georgia gets it going again. Nate Frazier did lead the team in rushing when all was said and done, and he will be back next year. Portal is basically closing, and Georgia hadn't made a lot of big-time additions. So I know Kirby is still a believer in developing the roster, and roster retention is very good over there. Might Georgia dip into the portal again after the spring window opens? We shall see.
And a lot of that's going to be contingent on who ends up going into it.
I think it'll be it'll be an interesting spring for Georgia.
Yeah.
Because again, they won the SEC. They got at least 2 projected first-round picks, and Etienne's not one of them, but a couple of defenders. And yet, again, it was a bad year in a lot of ways.
They lost 3 games.
Yeah, for Georgia football.
When was the last time they lost 3 games?
Is that why Mark Richt wasn't there anymore? I don't know. I don't think Kirby had a 3. Did he have a 3-loss season his first year?
Early in his
Maybe.
tenure, he had some
First year?
stinkers, but especially by their standards. But
yeah,
this is a year in which Alabama and Georgia both lost a combined 7.
The other big name in the SEC that is moving on to the draft, again, to the surprise of very few, if any, Quinn Ewers, Texas quarterback, is moving on. He had a heck of a run. Came in when they were down. He led them to 21 wins, 2 appearances in the CFP, an appearance in the first ever, at least for Texas, opportunity in the SEC championship game. They won the Big 12 last year to get into the CFP. They beat Alabama the season prior. This kid had a good run, man, and yet I don't think Texas fans were trying to shove him out the door. But I do think they were kind of doing like the door was open.
It's
and
like
they were doing the head nod.
It's like whenever you're ready for somebody to leave your house, you don't want to be like, "Hey, can you get the hell out of here?" You start maybe yawning a little bit.
I think that was kind of that, right?
Start, maybe brush your teeth.
Right.
Like, insinuate it's getting kind of late. I'm wrapping up here.
Or when you go to a Broadway show or something, and they do the little light turn down, like when it's time to come back in for the intermission in the reverse.
Right.
It's like, hey, man. We had a good time tonight. Yeah, no, we had a great time.
You start hearing the Oscars music start playing.
Right.
It's like, oh.
Hey, I can't wait to see you next time we do one of these. That'll be great. Or you mean is it time? Yeah, well, no, I mean, well, no, you if you want to hang around, it's cool. But we got things to go. That's what it feels like.
One of those. Yeah.
But he had a good run. It's Arch Manning's team now.
Yep.
Will it be Steve Sarkisian's team? I think so. But
you never know.
I think he's going to talk.
Oh, the interest is there from NFL
I think he's going to talk to some NFL folk. But Quinn Ewers, 21-5 as a starter at Texas, and is amongst the statistical leaders in a number of categories at that school. For his career, 9,128 yards, 68 touchdowns, completed 65% of his passes in 3 seasons. It's pretty good.
They went to 2 college football playoffs, semifinals.
Yeah, 2 playoffs, 2 conference championship games, 1-1 in those.
That is a decorated winning career, yeah.
I don't know, though. I think I saw that he's like the 6th rated quarterback. Is that right?
Probably. In all honesty, I think that actually might be fairly accurate. I mean, trying to pull up right now who the best quarterbacks are. I mean, you got Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward. I think we both take over him. Would you take Jalen Milroe over Quinn Ewers? Would you take Drew Aller over Quinn Ewers?
Aller's going to come back, right? He can, but
he can. Yeah, I think he is. Yeah, I think he is. Yeah,
I probably would.
Trying to think of other guys.
I don't
Jackson
know.
Dart. Would you take Jackson Dart over Quinn Ewers?
I don't think I would.
I don't know if I don't. Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know. I like Ewers, man. I think I'm not sure what there are certainly some intangibles that the experts see in others. I get all that. I don't know. I'm sometimes more of the fan. I see a winner. I see a dude who played hurt a lot. Again, you're averaging 3,000 plus over 3 seasons. You're completing 2 of every 3 passes you throw. You threw for more than 20 touchdowns a year.
A little turnover happy.
A little bit.
Some throws, he's very limited. I think Sark did a really good job of not making him throw the throws that he doesn't make.
And I think that's what it comes down to a lot of times.
Yeah.
Are you coachable, and am I going to be in a position to put you where you can best succeed?
Can you pair him with an offensive coordinator who maximizes?
That's what I loved so much about watching the growth of Lenoris with Dowell this year. Dowell, they got tuned in, man.
They did.
I think Mike was there a lot, and I look forward to what that's going to be next season. But you really saw those guys get locked in, and that's again, I keep saying it. I've been really impressed with Steve Sarkisian. I am so much more impressed than I thought I would be, and that's just me talking about how I feel about things. I don't want anybody
and how you felt about it at the time when they hired him.
Yeah, I you got to see it, and I have just been thoroughly impressed with the job that Steve Sarkisian has done across the board in Austin. I really have. But a part of it is this. Sark does seem to have the full package of the politics, the recruiting,
Yep.
and the coaching.
Handling all those cooks that are in that kitchen, man.
And it's not easy at a school like that. So good for them. Finally, quick note here for you. This is good news and seemingly kind of long overdue. The NCAA today approved paying women's basketball teams for the NCAA tournament. It was a unanimous vote. It was the final step toward a pay structure for women beginning this March. Governor Charlie Baker saying, we're the lucky ones. We got to be here on the day it became a reality. It'll be performance units. $15 million will be awarded to teams out of the fund this year, and it'll escalate over the coming seasons. But long overdue, so good for them to get that one done today at their convention. That's our integrated media headlines of the day, 803-948-8327 for all your home theater needs. Come back on the other side. Elijah breaks down some of the particulars as the Gamecocks look to get a much-needed road win in Nashville. The EBPI forecast is next. Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union, ready to help you and your family out with any and all of your banking needs. Resolved to do your banking better and to keep more money in your accounts. How do you keep more money in your accounts, you ask? Well, here's the deal. Palmetto Citizens is a not-for-profit credit union. That means their earnings are returned to their members in the forms of lower rates and fewer fees. All right? Some of the big banks charge you a lot of money for keeping your money in their bank. Not the same at Palmetto Citizens. Whether it's checking, savings, credit cards, student loans, car loans, home loans, basically money for any reason whatsoever. You can do it better with Palmetto Citizens. My wife and I really have loved our experiences with them over the years, and we think you will too. 14 locations. They're all local, all right? They're all right here and been in business since the 1930s. Check them out online. Learn more for all your banking needs at palmettocitizens.org. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of the program here on a Wednesday afternoon. Again, we'll be making way for Carolina basketball. They'll tip off at 6 o'clock at Memorial Coliseum up in Nashville. So airtime coming up in about 10 minutes. Jay and Elijah with you. Before I get the EBPI forecast, a very cool note in basketball, women's basketball last night. Iowa State had an amazing streak end last night, despite winning by 13 points over Texas Tech at home in Ames. But last night, they didn't make a three-pointer. And you may say, so what? They had made a three-pointer in 945 consecutive games. They were still a member of the Big Eight. The Big 12 didn't begin until the next season when this streak started. That's crazy. Connecticut had won none of their championships in women's basketball when this streak started. There was no WNBA yet when this streak started.
What was the date of that streak again?
It began on February 19, 1995 at Colorado.
That was a month before I was born.
It's crazy. That's crazy.
That streak was older than me.
Yeah. But they won, so that's cool. And now they'll just start a new streak. 945 consecutive games with at least one made three-pointer. That's pretty cool, man.
That's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
That is an incredible streak.
That's pretty cool. Gamecocks might need to make a few of them tonight. It has not been their forte. Again, the BPI gives the Gamecocks a very slim chance to win this one, about 28%. So now we get the EBPI breakdown of tonight's game.
Yeah. Really, the biggest things for me is you look at Vanderbilt's team. They are top 20 in the country at forcing turnovers and at avoiding turnovers on offense. They win the turnover battle a lot. That's how they've won a lot of their games. You can't have lazy passes. This offense we've seen at times this year be a little careless with the basketball. You can't do that against Vanderbilt because they will pick it off and go the other way. They are fans of the pick six. Chris Lee talked about that when he was on with us earlier this afternoon. And you can't do that here. In a video breakdown that I have on the game, I showed a couple of examples of Missouri, them being careless with the ball and it getting picked off going the other way for a layup. The other one was how good Jason Edwards is at playing off ball. They're one of the better off-ball defensive teams that you'll see because they're really in sync with each other. They play passing lanes really well, where Caleb Grill, the guy who went off for a bajillion points against Florida last night, cutting back door, and Jason Edwards did a really good job of turning his head around, slapping the ball away, and going the other way with it, reading the play really well. Like they are good at picking you off when you have lazy passes and when you make the right read and the right play, like Missouri did in the play that I highlighted in that video. It's going to be a lot of you're going to need Colin Murray-Boyles to do what he did on Saturday. Yep. Let's go one-on-one with Vanderbilt's bigs. And if Vanderbilt brings help, which they rarely do, that's one thing Vanderbilt rarely does is help off of shooters. They will have guys glued off ball to shooters. They will like to play one-on-one. They trust their guys one-on-one to be able to make the opposing team shoot tough shots. Auburn had that same strategy, and Colin went out for 25 and 7. If they do that tonight, Colin's going to have to be in score-first mode, take some dudes off the dribble, get to the rim, draw fouls, get to the free throw line, and be able to dominate the game that way. I don't really see a player for Vanderbilt holding him one-on-one, which is why I'm a little higher than, say, the ESPN Basketball Power Index. I give South Carolina a 45% chance to win this game. I think it's a lot closer. Yeah. I think Vanderbilt has a slight edge being at home, and they a little streakier when it comes to shooting, but they're not incompetent at that in the very least. I think losing Tyler Tanner hurts a little bit, but they're a really good two-point shooting team because they're at least really fundamentally sound. They space the floor incredibly well. If you're able to stop the driving lanes, stay in front of somebody defensively, stick to the defensive principles that Lamont Paris has alluded to all year long, which they did a significantly better job at in the Auburn game, then I think you can go to Nashville and steal this game.
Yeah, you're going to have that kind of thing start to travel. Neither one of these teams comes in playing good basketball. Vandy's lost 2 straight. Carolina's lost 3 straight. They do have a common opponent in Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt hosted them, lost at home by 12. Again, Carolina went to state to open conference play, and as we know, lost by 35 points. Again, I don't know what those kind of things tell us about what to expect tonight. Does a 5 o'clock local time start keep the gym a little quieter? You know, you might want to hope that if you're South Carolina. I don't want to rely too much on something like that from an ambience perspective to be a difference maker. But, yeah, I don't know. At this point in time, you look for any edge you can possibly get. And to your point about how Vandy guards the ball, Elijah, for Carolina, some of these guys have been in a gym with weird sight lines, but not all of them have. How much does that make a difference?
This gym is the king of the weird sight line. Playing on an elevated floor with the benches behind the baskets.
It's different. And again, you can overcome it. And usually most teams will tell you, we got used to it by about 10 minutes and things like that. But
cool gym, though.
Yeah.
Love that place.
Yeah.
Love that place.
So, yeah, but I agree with Alan Cole, who joined us earlier. This isn't must win on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is must win. But I kind of liked his 9.9. You better go get this one.
You gave him the decimals, and that made a world of difference.
Good stuff today. We appreciate Alan joining us, Chris Lee as well. Enjoy the ball game. Elijah and I will see you all tomorrow.